All right. Morning, Rob. How we doing?
Doing good. How are you?
Doing good. It looks like they gave you a little extra music. The song I noticed got longer and longer, so I'm liking it. I'm liking it. All right, guys. Well, welcome to our National Leaders Call. As you guys know, a couple weeks ago we had a call and we decided to make a slight shift how we do these calls, and I think it's been for the better for sure. Every other week we're going to do a national call where you guys are going to hear from a very successful owner. In some program we have going on where they're leading by example, kicking ass in some way, shape, or form, and they're going to share with you guys what's working for them from a leadership standpoint. But one of the things we felt was missing was giving you guys specific leadership coaching at a program level. So now every other Tuesday, you guys are going to hear from the leaders of your specific program, and they're going to do something very targeted, whether it's driving sales, training, leadership development, recruiting, conversations, which is great. But we're still very, very excited to continue our leadership masterclass. And today we have a great speaker, someone who's very successful in our industry. And he got really pissed at me. He's like, Van, how come I haven't spoke yet? I'm like, you know what, Rob, that's a great point. I think we got to fight Mike Lay. I think we got to fight JP. But either way, we got Rob, and we're really, really excited to hear from him today. He's going to be talking about ongoing leadership development, which I think is super important for where we are in our business. We've talked a lot about recruiting, mentality of recruiting, mentality of team building. Today, Rob's going to discuss with you guys what to do once you've hired someone. So how do you take that person and turn them into a successful, strong leader? Because retention is a big part of our business, and people will stick around if they really feel like they're growing. And this is something that all of our owners have to do, but it really starts at the leadership level for all of you guys listening today. So we're really, really excited to hear Rob break that down for us. Rob, your background, you're from Long Island. We talked about how you're a Jets fan. We see the helmet in the top corner there, and I'm a Raiders fan. You're a Jets fan. We both live in the same agony. Before the business, you graduated college and you kind of went to the workforce, and you experienced something that I think a lot of people experience, but they stay in it because they don't have any other options. They don't know what else to do. So talk about a little bit about your job experience that turned you away from sort of the corporate world and got you interested in doing something like this.
For sure. So when I graduated from Towson, I ended up getting pretty lucky. Everybody knows in corporate America, it's not about what you know, it's all about who you know. So I got referenced by Bob Nystrom. Bob Nystrom was on the dynasty team for the Islanders from 80 to 84 from a family friend. So he actually got me in, and because of my background, I had an internship with Towson Sports Marketing, Division I program, and a degree. He got me in there with the New York Islanders. So I thought sports management, figured my career out. I'm working with a professional sports team, which that's what 99% of sports management majors want. But when I got into it, in the beginning, it was all like, bright eyes, like, oh, wow, this is so cool. I got to meet Charlie Wong, who owned the team. I got to meet Tavares, who was the captain. I think he plays for the Maple Leafs now, but just really, really cool experience. And when I started to get more into it and I started to do the day-to-day, I started to see the upward mobility, the growth, the culture, all of those things started to turn me away from that industry. It was kind of a tough pill to swallow because you put in 4 years of your college degree and then you expect something totally different, but the environment wasn't the greatest. The managers didn't really care about the people that were under them. They were just doing a job. The people that were ahead of me were there for like 30, 40 years, and they were still working 80 hours a week. Max making 45, 50 grand. And it kind of turned me off. It really did. I had a tough conversation with my parents and said, hey, I don't know if this is for me. I can't see myself growing or working with this team for 30 or 40 years. So I think I need to go find something else. And that's kind of when I made the decision to leave that aspect.
Yeah. It's crazy because when we're, growing up, especially I'm a huge sports fan. If someone were to tell me, hey, you're going to get to work for, a team that you love or a team that you know of that's a big time team, a lot of us think, well, that's our dream job. When you get into the mix and you really see what goes on, things that you consider passions or things you love, when you can't grow and you can't earn more and you can't have more responsibility, it ends up becoming a turnoff where it's like, well, I'd rather just watch this team for fun than work behind the scenes and be stuck for many, many years. So you left, right? You studied sports management, you left working for a professional hockey team, and then you got a job at Marshall's, right? And you were like, hey, I just need money. And then you started as a cashier and you worked your way up. What happened at Marshall's that led you to say, you know what, I got to leave here too?
So I moved back to Maryland. I got a job at Marshall's. it was just super convenient. I needed to make money. I would work 39.95 hours. They wouldn't let me work over that because they had to give me time and a half and benefits. So they would pretty much like kick me out of the store at in the middle of my shift because I would just scoop up everybody's hours. I would almost like nag them out and be like, hey, you don't want to work tomorrow, do you? And they'd be like, nah. I'd be like, all right, I'll take your hours. So that's how I got up to 40. They would only schedule me 20. And I just wanted to make money. So I worked my way up. I take a lot of pride in everything that I do. I was making $8.75 an hour, worked up to supervisor, coordinator, like the highest position you could be in before you get into management. And then an operations manager position opened up. So I applied for it, sat down with my manager. They said, oh, we'll take you into consideration. And then before I know, no communication, this guy comes in from Best Buy, gets hired for operations management. And I basically have to train him on how to do the job because I knew Marshall's like the back of my hand. My girlfriend still makes fun of me that I have like the code stuck in my head and stuff like that. But that's what led me that weekend when I found out that they hired the position. I literally sat in my college apartment in my bedroom and I started applying for positions.
Nice. So now you make the transition to our business, which is, very different than, getting a job at Marshall's. Right away, it's performance-based. It's your work ethic, your attitude, your student mentality determines your growth. You started off in Townsend, Maryland on the Power program back in 2013. You got promoted to management. You then opened up an office and it didn't go so well. You were an owner. I guess you became an owner in 2013. And by the beginning of 2014, you realized that, you needed help. We heard from Nick Hearn a couple of weeks ago about his whole process of being an owner and going to the United States for a retrain to really get better at the business and how that changed the course of his life. Well, you kind of had that moment in 2014 where you decided, you know what, I need help. You went and spent time with Ken and you learned the Verizon program. And, that was obviously a game changer. And today, 7 years later, you got 11 owners. You're closing in on becoming a regional in terms of the amount of offices you have. And you've got your crew is doing 500 apps a week, close to, and you got multiple programs that you're involved with in terms of your owners. Chris Brusella, who's totally kicking ass. He's in your organization. You got JP, and you were telling me about Lena, who just opened up in North Carolina on 5G, and she did 12 apps her first day. So it sounds like things are really cranking for you. But what did you learn from that retrain, and what made you look at this and say, that's what I'm going to do versus I need to quit this industry or quit the business because I'm not capable? What was your mindset going into the retrain, and what did you learn from it?
So for me, I'm a firm believer of there's really nothing that separates somebody that's successful or not. A lot of it is just hard work and determination. I know that sounds corny, but that's what I truly believe. So I looked at people that were successful in the business and I kept thinking in my head, I'm like, I know if they could do it, I could do it. Like seeing examples like yourself and other owners that were super successful. I'm like, I know I could do it. I know I can compete with those guys and girls that are up there. So that kind of held on to it a lot. The other thing for me is that I didn't want to go through the process, and you don't just want to be successful one day, the next day you don't. Like you don't just lose that. That doesn't make any sense. So I still wanted to really be successful. I still wanted to make a lot of money. I still really enjoyed helping people. I didn't want to leave the business and then look back with regret. I didn't want to quit and then 5 years after I quit or 10 years after I quit, and I had attachment with Mike Lay. So I see Mike Lay making $1 million. Like I would have been so mad and upset and frustrated that I left at that moment. So that's what kept me sticking around. I wanted to go on a retrain because I just knew I needed help. I knew I didn't have the proper coaching. I didn't have the proper training. And I wanted to partner up with somebody that I thought could be successful, or that was successful. And the name that I always heard day in and day out was Ken Weinraub. Ken Weinraub, he was on every call. He had an organization, everything. So I had the opportunity to go train with him on a retrain and learn a new program with Verizon that was just starting off when we just partnered up with them. So I saw it as a good opportunity, and that's why I went to Ken's office.
Nice. Well, Rob, I've known you for many years, and one of the things that's always impressed me about you is you're very, very consistent in your approach to how you deal with your people. You really talk to your people in a way that is mutual. You don't look down at your guys, you develop them, and you're constantly in coach mode on top of the relationship you build. And that's why I think your topic today, which is ongoing leadership development, is so important. When you look at the people that come into our offices, the people that come onto your teams, they're not just showing up, just because they want to make money. Sure, people might start that way. The reason why people stick is because they see themselves growing. and they become confident that they can do what is necessary to be successful long-term. And it's up to us as leaders is to instill that and to hold people accountable throughout that process. So Rob, very excited to hear your topic today. So why don't you bring up your slides and let's get into it. And thanks, shout out to Maddie and Elise for helping us get these slides, as Rob does not have PowerPoint.
Let's see if I can find it here.
Google Slides. There we go.
All right, so you guys ready?
Let's do this.
All right, so the reasons why I wanted to go over this, and just to give a little bit of an introduction, I was telling this to Van, but the reasons why I feel like this topic is so important is because a lot of the times I think there's a misunderstanding of people and the business where people just think like, oh, well, the right people are going to come in, they're just going to do well, they're going to crush, and they're just going to automatically develop themselves, or there's going to be higher turnover and there's nothing you could do about it. Like people are going to fall off. And I do agree with some of those things. And I agree that it is a little bit more challenging for what we do, but there's a lot of things that we can do that go a lot more in depth that we can help develop and build people. The people that are successful in this business, they don't just get there because they were born to be in that position. We get developed through the process. And that's what I'm trying to go over with this topic, and trying to help you guys in everything that I can do to make you realize that people get developed. Growth is the ultimate motivator of what Van spoke about. So that's why I wanted to go over this topic. There's so much information. I'm going to go over as much as I can in the amount of time frame that we have. And then if you guys have any questions or follow-ups after, I'm more than happy to hop on a Zoom call or go over more questions later on. Whatever you guys need from me, I'm happy to do so. So the first thing that I've been going over in my office and my organization is talking about the 4 main things that you need to focus on when you're in leadership, right? When you get into an account management position. And the 4 things that I focused on, or that we focused on in our organization, is number 1 is you have to understand the foundation of the company. You have to be able to understand the foundation of the business. That entails teaching the topics of the management checklist. Do I spend time with the manager? Do I communicate with my manager with my goals? What do I actually want to accomplish in this business? Make yourself available, right? Most people think it's the manager's job to grab people up all the time and have conversations with them, but the right people make themselves available. They put themselves out there, and they're able to get trained by the top people. So number 1 is the foundation. All right, be an aggressive student. Number 2 is recruiting. You have to understand recruiting. Recruiting is not just doing second round interviews. It's not recruiting. You don't just recruit first round. Like, recruiting and becoming a good recruiter is not just about interviewing somebody. It's so much more in depth. It's more about an ongoing process. It doesn't just stop. It doesn't stop. Like if you do a second round interview, it doesn't just stop when somebody gets into the business. Recruiting is an ongoing thing. It's a continuous process from when somebody starts to when they get into management and even further. So that's one of the biggest things. And it's more in depth where you got to put yourself in the other people's shoes. You have to understand where they grew up. You got to understand their upbringing. You got to understand them as an actual person instead of just looking at it as a number to get you promoted or something along those lines. And there's other in-depth things like, when they start and what types of conversations to have, but we can go over that later in the process. Number 3 is training. I was always taught how to become a certified trainer. The best trainer in the office is always the next assistant manager, is what I was always told. So for me, that was one of the biggest things that I always tried to focus on, was how could I duplicate myself? How could I become the best trainer in the office? And my results always got measured based off of the people that I trained. And it's the same thing in management. My results right now as a leader, the only way I can categorize my leadership is by the results of the people that I coach and train. So if my guys and girls aren't doing well, that's on me. I got to figure out what I can do in order for me to be a better leader. And it's the same thing that was in the management training program. If I was an account manager and I developed somebody in the field and they weren't doing well, that was on me. There was something wrong in my cycle of development, in my training process that I needed to get better with. So a lot of accountability. Number 4 is the marketing and sales. I remember the first Top Gun meeting I ever went to in Dallas. The person went over their topic, and the first thing that they said was ring the bell, right? Every owner knows how to set the pace. They know how to do the marketing and sales. And it doesn't necessarily mean that those people are the best at sales. That's not what that means. The reasons why owners can go out consistently and set the pace and they're the best in the office is because they have the best attitude. In my notes, it's in all caps. It says not because they were the best at sales, but because they have the best attitude, exclamation point. That's why owners set the pace. That's why people get to ownership, is not because they're the best at sales. It's because they have the best attitude. So I don't know if you want to kind of go over anything on that slide, man.
No, I think it's good. I think, when you're hiring someone on board, you kind of have to know what are the things that you need to focus on for yourself first to be good at. So when they come in, they're seeing the example. And that's really one of the most important things about developing good people is you're that example first. So I love how you're talking about the things you need to be doing for yourself, being a good trainer, being good in the field, having a checklist, and then understanding that recruiting is ongoing. It's not just the interview, you're constantly recruiting. So it's really about you first. That sets the precedent for the people that you can develop and retain past the first part you hire them. So I love that.
Yeah. And this is a question for the owners too. Like if an account manager comes up, or some of the account managers that are on this call say, what do I need to get really good at in account management? These are your 4 main topics. So that's why I went over this slide. I felt like it's very important, some type of guidance for those people.
Sure.
Next, so the next aspect of it is I recruit somebody and they come into the company. You have to have some type of initial conversation. A lot of the times we don't have initial conversation and we don't set the ground rules. In anything that you do in a business, in a sport, the first thing that you do when you get into that team or whatever it is, they set up the ground rules. Like, hey, these are the do's and don'ts. This is what we're here for. You don't just try and recruit somebody and sign a big contract. Like, you want to get to know them as a person. So these are the 4 things that I've been going over with the leaders. These are what you need to do when somebody first comes in. You could do a breakfast. You can have them come a half an hour early. You can set something up the Sunday before they start, however creative you want to be. But you have to sit down with the new guy and girl that comes into the company that's going to start with you, right? And you're going to develop them. These are the 4 things that you have to go over. Number 1, you got to find out their goals. You got to find out what they want to accomplish, right? You got to find out their step 7 or their vision. Their burning yes, whatever you want to call it. You got to find their drive, their chip on their shoulder. That's number 1 as a leader. Number 2 is I got to figure out how they want to be coached. The reasons why this is super important is because you don't want to be an aggressive coach for somebody that doesn't want aggressive teaching. So every single person, when I was in account management and I would bring them on board and I'm working with them and develop them, I would say, hey, how do you want to be coached? If you do something wrong, do you want me to tell you? Do you want me to be upfront and direct, or do you want me to sugarcoat things? Do you want me to be more of like the TLC, tender love and care? Like, what do you want me to do in your coaching style? How do you want to be coached? This is going to help further on down the road. Number 3 is I have to set up a break-even breakfast. When I was in Towson, we used to go to THB, it was Towson Hot Bagels for all the people that are on Maryland to call. And we would go and take our new guys and girls out and we would get a coffee. We would buy them breakfast. So we'd buy them a bagel. If it was a breakfast sandwich, it was like $3. A coffee was $2. So it's $5 investment right away when somebody comes in, and I go over their finances, not how much money they want to make, how much money they need to make in order for them to survive. It helped me build a relationship with them. It helped me understand their finances. And right away, that's the first step of mentorship. I'm taking them under my wing. I'm helping them make sure that they can make actual money. After that, I got to go over my expectations for them. So now, hey, this is all of what you want. You want to grow. You want to get to management. You want to make $1,000 a week. You want me to be a tough coach. You want me to be direct. This is what I need from you. I need you to be in every day. I need you to be on time. I need you to be a good student. I need you to make sure that you're focused in the field. You can't be on your phone. I'm going to need you to do homework. I'm going to need you to set up goals on the weekends. This is what I'm going to need from you if you want us to accomplish these things together. So not only do I get their information of what they want from the business and from me, now I tell them what I need in order for us to be able to make that happen. So every single person that you hire, you should be sitting down with initial conversation and going over these 4 things when somebody starts.
Yeah. And for people that are listening, Rob, what would you say is where to do this, when to do it? Like, what's the appropriate time? Because it seems like the break-even breakfast is kind of its own thing. But the learning about their step 7, how do they want to be coached, going over expectations, is that all kind of in one conversation when they first start?
Yes, it takes about a half an hour to 45 minutes. It doesn't have to be this long impact session. And it's just to get to know them. I prefer doing it outside the office. That's what I prefer. It's not mandatory. If you don't have enough time to do that and you just want to do it in the office, let's say the new starts come in at 11:30, right? I'm going to tell that person to come in at 11 or 10:45. And maybe I pick up breakfast on the way to the office, right? So I pick up breakfast, order something, whatever the case may be, but I want to sit down with them and have a one-on-one conversation. The breakfast isn't the point of it. The point of it is getting this information, but I like to see people outside the office and build a relationship with them. You could do it on Sunday. So if somebody's going to start on Monday, right, you could do it on Sunday, the weekend before, excuse me. But there's all different ways to do it, but it takes about a half an hour, 45 minutes for somebody to do it. I prefer it outside the office.
Yeah. And you look at the difference it makes, right? When someone comes in and they see you taking the time, right? They see you taking the time to get to know them. They see you taking the time to set the tone. They see you taking the time to figure out what's important to them, right? That allows you, like it says at the bottom, these initial conversations help with coaching later. When you set the tone and they understand like what's expected, I mean, you're just increasing the odds of this person, doing the right things earlier, right? Because at some point, habits that they develop become concrete. So the goal is to get them to develop strong habits early, not because you're just hoping, but because you're guiding them to these habits by telling them what's important, telling them what's needed. And what, Rob, I'm sure this helps you, is when you set this tone and you set this precedent, when they are off course, you can kind of go back to that conversation, right? You can go back and say, hey, I know we talked about this. Well, this is what I'm discussing now.
That's the most important part, because everybody's going to get off course at one point in time. That's the most important part. A lot of the times what happens is people have very, very reactive conversations. So they don't have any standards set up in the beginning. They can't hold them accountable to anything. So if somebody shows up late or misses a day or they're not focused in the field, you can't be like, hey, you remember when you told me you wanted to retire your mom? Like, do you think that you're going to get there? And I know that's pretty aggressive, but anything like, hey, you remember you told me you wanted to make $1,000 a week? Well, you're not going to be able to do that if you're lagging 15 feet behind me. So it just makes training so much easier when you set that tone right away in all aspects.
Yeah. And I'm sure there's times when you can just tell it's not a good fit. And it actually makes it easier to kind of help this person, leave the business, because you're like, hey, I know you told me these things, but it just doesn't seem like it's the right time in your life. And of course, our goal is to retain people and develop them. But there's certain people that we got to send on their way because it's just not a good fit. And that's okay too. But these initial conversations will show you guys those red flags. They'll show you things that, man, I thought one thing, but this person's now saying another. And it doesn't mean you give up on the person after that conversation, but you kind of keep it in the back of your mind. And when you start to see these trends happen, you got to have those breakup conversations with them before they have them with you. And that's either going to get them in shape quick, or it's going to really have them do something else. Like at some point, that's the best thing for some people. So good stuff, Rob. I love it.
All right. So let me see. All right. So now the next step is, this is an ongoing, remember how we said recruiting is ongoing? This is what I want to accomplish with this, is you have to understand more in depth about the actual process. You got to understand more in depth about the actual person. So there's things and questions that you want to know to get to know this person, so you can be proactive about negatives or challenges. So number one, I put in, how long is their commute? I mean, do they have any tolls? Is it extra time away from home? What are their habits like? Right? You can tell a lot about that. I mean, are they commuting and taking public transportation? Like, how do they get into the office? What's their time from? Like, what's their financial situation? Like, that goes back into the break even, right? You need to know how much money they need to make in order for them to survive. If somebody's break even is $800 a week and they got a family and kids, or they have their own house or their own apartment, they live on their own, you got to make sure that they can make enough money in order for them to be able to survive. If somebody's very, very sharp and you like them a lot and they could do really good in this program, but they're not making enough money initially and you're not having any preemptive conversations, they're going to quit and fall off. That's a person that you could have retained, but you're not having any conversations with them and developing them. So you're not investing into them. You're not extra miling on a Sunday if they need it and giving them, money or helping them out or anything along those lines. So you can't just be naive and think that if you just brush it under the rug, like everything is going to be okay. That's not how it works. What does their mom or dad think about the new job? So what's their support system like? What do they do? What types of outside influences are you going home to? What types of career path do they have? Do they work in schooling? Are they an accountant? Do they run their own business? Like, I want to know those things because I want to know what type of coaching they get when they go home. Right. A lot of times we don't have these conversations with people when they first start. We don't get to meet them. We don't get to meet their significant other. They're not coming to team nights, none of this. And they end up falling off or quitting. And you're like, I don't know why that person quit or fell off. Meanwhile, when they go home every single day, their parents are telling them that they work too much, right? Or their significant other is complaining about not having enough time. So there's so many things that we could do in order for us to help people through this process. Yes, it's going to be hard. It's not going to be easy, but you get to know them. Like I've gone to dinners with people's parents. I've done Zoom calls. I've taken people out to breakfast. I always try and get significant others to come to team nights. And that's my main focus, is because I want to get to know them. I want them to meet me. They meet my girlfriend. Sometimes they meet my family. We'll have barbecues. Like, I want them to know me as a person. And that's kind of what Chris talked about on his call a couple weeks ago, is getting to know the people outside the office. Very, very important. That will help a lot with retention. Do they have a boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, or wife? Do they support them? Are they against it? Why? What type of schedule do they work? Does it line up to what we do? Is it the opposite of what we do? Like, I need to know all these different things. Do they have a hard time balancing the hours? What other influences do? What do they do for school? Like, all these different things. I want to see if it lines up, and their goals, what they want to accomplish. So the point of this topic and this part of the topic is to make sure that you really get to know these people in depth. It's not just a surface level. If you treat people like a number, you're just going to be the next Home Depot. Like, these companies, corporate America, they don't care about the actual person. If you want to separate yourself and you actually want to be a leader and a mentor, get to know your people and look at them as business partners, not numbers.
Yeah, it's kind of like, when we look at the weather, right? If you're a professional weatherman or weatherwoman, right? Their goal is to forecast. So they look at all these, all the things through their scientific instruments, whatever they're doing, and they can kind of anticipate, based on the information they currently have, where things are going to be for the next couple of weeks, right? Where things are going to be. And they're not always right, but they've done a pretty good job, right? And so our job as leaders is to, as this is titled, have preemptive conversations to start to forecast a problem that may not exist right now, but it may become a problem in a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. And we got to be thinking ahead. And if we don't have information, we can't forecast anything. And so many times we hire people and we kind of assume everything's great. We assume that if they're here, they're excited, they're going to love it, they're going to get promoted, everything's going to be perfect. And you kind of have to do the opposite. You have to kind of figure out what's going to go wrong, right? What are the things that are going to impede growth or impede their success? And the only way you can figure that out is by doing what Rob's talking about, which is figuring out who they are, what their background is, who are the people in their life, what are their goals, what's their outside influences. And if you can get ahead of those things, like Rob said, having dinner with family, getting to know their significant other, bringing them in, making the people that are important to them feel important to you, now you're going to have a leg up. It doesn't guarantee anything, but what it does is it improves your odds of really having this person look at you and think, well, you know what, this person's adjusting to what I need to make sure this works for me. So I really love that. And I think it's super important for anyone listening to have these preemptive conversations and figure out what are the potential negatives a month from now, not the ones that are existing today.
And you'll be surprised of how many times I had conversations and I go over these and they were like, they'll come back the next day or right after the conversation. They'll be like, Rob, I can't believe you just said that, because my parents have been giving me crap about the hours, or my relationship has been suffering because of this. And I just thought that's just because the way it is, but you really helped me out, like balancing the relationship and knowing that you can still do this and have a successful relationship. You'd be surprised. Like, most people are not going to come to you and say, hey, I'm struggling with my relationship, can you help? That doesn't happen. And you remember when I said, Van, where I needed I knew I had more, I needed to be developed. This is the stuff that I learned from Ken that I didn't know before. I looked at it as just like I was a manager of a Home Depot. I was a manager of a marketing company. I wasn't there for my people. I wasn't the best leader that I can be. And these are the things that Ken taught me.
We got a question here, Rob. It's about this specifically. It says, if you find that the hours of their significant other don't align with their hours of the training program, how do you combat that?
I would try and get to meet the significant other. And I would talk about how the goal is to eventually be in a position more long-term where you can have that person involved with your business and you can make yourself available, right? Because that's the cool part about when somebody gets into management, you have a lot more time and freedom. For me, like I have my girlfriend will come into the office whenever she wants. She comes and eats lunch with me some days. She comes and hangs out. She comes sometimes just to do schoolwork. She wants to get out of the house and she just comes in. She actually helped me design my whole office. I told you I'm terrible with creativity and interior design. I gave her the money and I said, here's 15,000 bucks. I want you to design the office. She picked out the paint colors, the floors, everything. And she started to become part of the business and the company. And now I always tell her, I'm like, hey, this is ours. This is not mine. This is ours. I was joking around with her the other day because we just put out, JP put out a promotion in Buffalo. And I'm like, you don't know this? Like, you don't know the person? She's like, what? Like, I was just giving her crap for it, but she became part of the business and the company. And those are the things that I always wanted for me in the business. So yeah, it was hard for the first 6 or 12 months to get into that position, but those are the things that I'm talking about. That's how I would combat that. Like, that's how I would educate the person of what I did. I'm not trying to convince them. I'm telling them what I saw and what I looked at and what I wanted for me and my family. And hopefully I can do the same thing for them.
Yeah, I've always felt that our imagination sometimes is worse than the reality. And we can imagine way crazier things, and when we actually experience it, it's not so bad. And I think a big part of that is when people are busy doing something new or different, we just want to make sure that they're a part of something that they trust and they believe in. And I think so many good people in our business, if they just spent time with people that were important to your people, they would see you. And there's so many examples and stories. Like you said, you grabbing dinner with someone. I met up with one of my leaders, and his whole family was in San Francisco, and I met them, and they were so relieved that I wasn't some crazy person. They're like, "Oh, you seem like a nice guy." I'm like, "Yeah, I'm just a regular guy," and it really changed their perspective. And so, don't underestimate the power of spending time with your people outside of the office, and especially the important people to them. It can really, really make a big difference. And there's countless stories of that happening. So I love that you mentioned that.
And if you don't have the confidence to have these conversations or do these things, ask your manager. Like maybe me and Ben, when we were account managers, we didn't do these things. Somebody did this to us, or whatever the case may be. So don't be afraid to ask for help. Don't be afraid to reach out to your manager or your mentor and see if they can help you out with these conversations. Because when I was a newer account manager, I didn't have the confidence to have some of these, but I would let my manager know. So if Van was my manager, I'd say, hey, my new guy, Billy, he's really struggling with his relationship. Do you think you can sit down with him and talk about it? And I would shadow the conversation, and Van would bring it up. He wouldn't say, hey, this is what Rob said. Van would bring it up and have conversations because he's good at the business. And then he would talk to Billy about his relationship. And I would see the angle that he would take. I would see what he covered, and I would see all these things. So I was getting developed at the same time. So if you're getting overwhelmed by this and you're like, wow, this is a lot, like, I don't know if I could do all this, that's okay. Utilize your managers, utilize your mentors to have these conversations with you and help you. That's the only way you're going to learn.
Yeah, that's awesome stuff.
All right. Now, another small thing too, and I know this isn't necessarily make or break, but even conversations before you have when somebody first goes out into the field, you want to be as proactive as possible. Every time when a new guy or girl goes out into the field in our office, I always say, I'm like, Van, you know that you're not going to sign everybody up today, right? And they go, yeah, I know. I'm just being proactive about it. I let them know, I'm like, hey, like, you're not going to be used to the walking. Like, I mean, when I first started, it got to me. I was used to being on my feet for 12 hours a day working at Marshall's, but walking around a lot. Like, it was a little bit challenging in the beginning. Let them know it's okay to be tired or sore. You build up endurance and stamina over time. Most new guys and girls will tend to focus on the negatives and challenges. So, hey, when I started, I was more focused on the rude customers rather than the customers that we were able to help out. So having small, proactive, preemptive conversations like this, you're planting seeds in their head for now them to go out and think about the positive people rather than the negative. You're helping them maintain their attitude because you know that the majority of people aren't going to sign up in the beginning of the day. So you're helping the attitude aspect of it. Spend time with the new guys. You mean in training, breaking down their days. They're the most important people because they're the most vulnerable. They just started. They don't know anything about it. It's a little bit uncomfortable. Make them feel comfortable. They don't know anything yet. So make sure you belt loop them. Spend time with them. Don't branch off and go hang out with your buddy in the office that you've been with for 3 months and leave your new guy or girl alone. Like, take them with you. Have fun. Build relationships with other people. Be preemptive about conversations when they go home. Hey, how was the day? How long? Like, they spent a long time away from their family. They're getting home a little bit late. Like, make sure that they have a good attitude when they go home. Make sure they're getting out of the office on time. A lot of the times people are like, oh, well, they want to stay. Okay, they want to stay, but you also, it's not just about them. It's about their family as well. They have a boyfriend or girlfriend at home. Like, make sure you're getting them out of the office and home on time because you told them the hours were this to this. Like, making sure that you're on top of these things, very, very important. I know it's a very small topic, but very, very important for you to go over what to expect, car rides, conversations, how it worked, see if they had any struggles, were they able to manage their attitude by themselves, were they able to work the territory correct, all those different things.
Yeah, it's kind of like, you want to be the one who tells them the things that they're going to think of saying before they think of saying, right? So what Rob does such a good job of, he's like, hey, your feet might be sore. That's okay. Before they can come to him and say, oh my God, my feet are sore. I don't know if I can do this. He's telling them the negative before they can even bring it up to him. So it's kind of like the preempting thing, talking about, hey, you're going to want to focus on the negatives like I did. He's being relatable, but it's really important to focus on the positive, the things we're learning, the belt loop, making sure they're with you the whole time, preempting conversations at home, which is so important, right? Asking your people, hey, how do you explain the business? How is, so-and-so thinking of how you're doing? Are they excited for you? Just teaching people how to handle negatives before they come up is so huge, because when those pop up and they know you've already told them, they're not looking at it like, wow, I've discovered something new that maybe these people aren't ready for that I can use as a reason why I can't do this. And so we've heard so much about preemption and how important that is to our business. And this is just another great example before guys go actually in the field. Really good stuff.
Went over that. All right. So this is more of the interview aspect of it. Now, I remember, I don't remember how long ago, but I remember Larry back in the day, he said he would always hire for attitude and he would train for skill. If you gave him the right person with the right attitude, he can train them on anything, right? So I've always took a lot of pride in that, and I've always looked at that because it helped me not prejudge anybody. But number one thing that you need to do overall is you need to take pride in your interviews. You need to, want to be the best or want to be a good recruiter, because the candidates that you sit down with, like, they're going on other job interviews, like they're looking at other positions, they're sitting down with maybe similar companies to what we do in your area. Like, what are you doing in the interview to separate yourself from everybody else? How do you make them feel in the actual interview? How did you build a connection and relationship with a candidate? And do they understand what you're looking for as a recruiter? Or are they willing to take a position with your company over another, even if the position offered more money up front? And I feel like this is such a big, important thing to realize about recruiting, is that you got to realize that most of us start in something because of the relationship that we have with the person we sat down with. Right. The main thing that made me start in this company was actually the relationship that I had with Greg Taylor. He was the person, like, he was just, I don't know, he was just such a cool dude. Like, it wasn't like I was like, wow, this guy's so motivated. Like, he was sharp. He had a nice haircut, hair gelled. He had a suit on. Like, he looked super professional. He walked into the office and like gave the admin a coffee and like winked at her. I was like, damn, like, that guy's so cool. And then he was the one that did my second round. And I was like, whoa, like, this guy's like, a beast. But that's why I started. I started, yes, because of the opportunity, because of the bigger picture and the atmosphere, but I started mainly because of him. Like, the relationship that you build with somebody is so important, especially up front, getting to know them, like building that connection. That's why somebody will start with you versus somebody else. Like, I remember, like, JP, when he started, he had to drive an hour and a half every day to my office, like, with no traffic. He lived like 65 miles from Cherry Hill. Like, and he actually interviewed with other companies in the area, but we built a relationship. My first round with him was an hour long, right? And I'm not saying do hour long interviews. I'm not saying that, but the connection that we had, the relationship that we had, I don't know. I felt like he was like my little brother. Like, I felt like I could bring him home to my family. So recruiting isn't it just about explaining the business. It's about the connection that you can build with people. I know some of the new guys and girls call it chopping it up, but you got to chop it up with the person. You got to build a relationship. You got to, Pat, that one was for you, but you got to build a relationship with them. You got to understand that it's all about the connection that you have with people. That's the main point of recruiting. The second aspect of it is don't prejudge anybody, right? You don't know somebody until you give them a shot or you try. Now, are there red flags? Are there other things? Yeah, but you can't prejudge somebody based off of a resume. You can't prejudge somebody based off of certain things. You got to give everybody a fair and equal shot. And it's the same way I coach and train people in my office. It's the same way I interview. I go in giving this person 100% until they prove me otherwise. So every single person that steps into my business, I look as an outside deal. I'm like, this person can get into management until they show me otherwise. Because I want to look back and I want to know I just gave that person 100%. If I can't say that, I failed. So whether that's an interview, whether that's somebody in my office, whatever the case may be, I try and give them 100%. I don't want to prejudge. Now on the reverse end, I don't need to hire every candidate. I'm not looking to hire every candidate. I'm not, this isn't a charity case. I'm not, looking for everybody to come on board. Like I want them to also sell me. I want them to prove to me that they have the right attitude, not the best suit, not the best haircut, not the best resume. I want them to prove to me that they have the best attitude. That's what I'm looking for. Hire for attitude, train for skill. If you don't think they're a positive hire for the office, then you don't hire them. If you're 50-50, give them a shot, right? Give them a shot, bring them back. For a second round or for a new hire, or whatever the case may be, like let them prove themselves right or wrong. It's not a negative to give somebody a shot and to try and develop somebody through that process, because there's plenty of people that managers gave shots on and now they're super successful in this company. So just an overview of the interview process, not to actually go in depth, but that's my mentality about recruiting and interviews.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably the biggest mistake that's made, not only in our business, but in the world, is you prejudge someone based on how they look, or maybe just some recent jobs they've had. And of course, like you said, you got to pay attention to red flags. If someone's had 15 jobs in the last 15 months, that's a conversation. But I love the idea, and I think we've heard this in another call, of the training, right? That first month of training, that's your filtering process. It's not, hey, I'm going to just disqualify someone in the interview just because they don't interview great, or because they don't have marketing background, or because they're not that sharp. We just promoted a leader in my office and he didn't own a suit. He comes from a background that's has nothing to do with the way we dress and the way we talk. So, but he got promoted and he looks sharp this Monday and he's upgraded his image. He got a haircut. There's a makeover that can happen with certain people. I didn't own a suit when I came in, and the suits I was wearing in the beginning did not fit me right. But eventually, we've heard Mike Lay talk about his grandpa's blazer or his grandpa's jacket. Like when you take chances on people, that's where you get to see what they're made of, because you don't know what's in someone's head, what's in someone's heart. You don't know what someone's capable of when you give them an opportunity. So I love the fact that you're talking about not prejudging, and then having a great training process where you give everybody a shot, and that's where you kind of decide, okay, who are the people that are really, they got what it takes, they're really doing the right things, and those are the people that you end up focusing on. So I love that.
And it all relates to, Van, it carries over from what we just talked about in the beginning, because if you have the initial conversation, now you can hold them accountable. If they're not held accountable, they're not doing it, then you can get rid of them. But at least you gave them a shot. You know that you gave them 100%. So everything connects, everything. It's just a seamless process throughout that. So I just wanted to kind of make that point. Now, next, I want to kind of go over preparation. Preparation is important. Now, some of these things are meant just for managers, and that's okay. But if you guys are in the right mindset, you guys are account managers on this call that want to eventually get into leadership or management, I would hope that you'd be interested about these topics anyway, because you're eventually going to be doing this. So for people that are excited and want to grow and they're eager, they want to know these types of things. So this is all the preparation that will go into a normal day for a manager or an account manager or a recent promoted assistant manager, right? So there's a lot of preparation. Some people think that the managers just show up, they run Atmo, they do it, and then they just go home or whatever. They run the meeting and that's it. And they send the people out for the field, and then they just sit around all day. That's not what it takes to be a successful manager or a head coach of a team, or a leader of a business. There's a lot that goes into it. So making sure call rides are set up, like who works well with each other, how can I maximize production, what types of conversations are being had in the call ride or in training. Am I prepared for a second round interview? I know some offices take second round interviews to the field. So is the call ride prepped up? Am I having proactive conversations about it? Did I focus on give them a heads up about that? Call ride setups are very, very important, because there are many offices for the day, and I want to be able to maximize on all of that. So number one is call rides. Number two is training. Do I have a set structure of training? Do I have a game plan? Is each workshop planned out? Am I using previous day breakdowns for specific skills? Do I have the right people in front of the room? Am I involved, or do I stay busy? And do I let my team build my office, right? So the training is very structured. You'll never see a teacher step into class without a curriculum or out a schedule. You'll never see a coach step into practice without a breakdown, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, water breaks, everything. Like you see their game plan set up. Same thing with a successful business owner. They have their game plan set up. What better way to start doing that as an account manager to prepare for the day the night before? So when you get into management, you're already ready. Now, maybe, yeah, as an account manager, you're mainly only focused on car rides, but at least you're getting in that mindset. At least you're starting to develop as a leader. So very important. Number 3 is conversations. Are there conversations that need to be had before the day? Did somebody lose their attitude in the day? Did they have a rude customer? Whatever the case may be. Can I set up one-on-ones before the day starts? Can I do one-on-ones myself? Can I have them sit down with the manager? Can I have a breakfast with a new guy or girl to go over like leadership goals or whatever? You don't have to do just a breakfast or break even. You could do breakfasts every day, right? Breakfasts, but you could do whatever you want every day, every week. You could do a dinner. I remember when me and Mike Lay were building our crew, we used to do Wednesday team nights. We would go to the Towson Diner, and most of us would get pancakes and chocolate milk. And we would just shoot the shit and have fun and build relationships. And then on Saturdays, all the top leaders in the office, we would go to Tex-Mex or whatever it was. We would get chimichangas, and then there was a stogie place across the street, and we would get cigars, and we would make pretend like we were like, Al Capone or something like that, like eating appetizers outside. But it was just a bond. It was something that we did together to bring the culture together, to bring the team together, having those types of conversations. Campaign meeting, what did we do yesterday? What are we going to do today? How are we going to do it? Morning meeting preparation, why we're going to go over it, what's the topic, and then leaders meeting. So this is a lot about preparation. There's a lot that goes into a successful day. If you want to maximize a day, it's not like you just show up, everybody goes out into the field, we have a good day, then we leave.
Yeah, for sure. And again, it's great that along with all these preemptive conversations, like the more you get good at this, the more people are going to appreciate you. And then that kind of leads to the relationship, right? When people ask, hey, how close are you with your people? Well, the further they get along, and the more success they have because of the coaching and the guidance and the preparation you give them, the more hooked on you they're going to get, where they're going to be like, man, you guys have heard the 5 levels of leadership. And what John Maxwell talks about, like people really are motivated to follow you when they feel like they're getting better results because of the coaching you've given them. And that's where these bonds and these relationships form, because there's this trust and there's this belief in what you have going on. And I think a part of that, which Rob talks about here, is kind of creating preemptive meetings with your team, talking about production for the day, talking about who's matched up with who. That's where the team feels like we're a team. And then on top of that, you create that environment where people are having fun, people are coming in. There's, nights you guys are grabbing dinner. I guess you guys are acting like you're Al Capone, whatever that was. That sounds great, right? Whatever it is that you guys do together, that's fun. That kind of goes into all these preemptive conversations as well, as building that chemistry, building those bonds with people where they can see that you're on it every day. You're not letting a day go by that's not important, that you're not preempting what we got to do. I think it's all really good stuff.
Awesome. So the last thing, or the second to last thing, we'll go through it quick, but this is just going over finances. I just wanted to kind of reiterate, like every rep should know what their paycheck is before Friday. If the reps don't know their paychecks, obviously they're going to assume the worst. They won't confront the managers or anything like that. It's something that Al really said to me, is there's no surprises on Friday. You should make sure like everybody knows what they're supposed to, like, are they tracking their apps? Are they going through it? Do they know how much they're going to get paid? Like mostly everybody in our office has like a production log. They have like how many apps they got installed. It helps you be on top of it. It helps to make sure that they're making money. You could be proactive. You could talk about quality, because then somebody's cancel rates might be a little bit high, or they maybe have a lot of submitted status, or the installation dates are pushed far out. Like you're going to start to get in the habit of being on top of these things very, very quickly. So super important, but making sure, and what company nowadays, like that's corporate America, sits down with somebody and they go, hey, what do you need to make? Like, what's your goals? What do you want to accomplish? How much money do you need to make per week? Like nobody does that. That's what the company and this business is all about, is like being that mentor and being that trainer for somebody, of like, hey, let me help you. Let me get you to that point. Let's make some money so you can save and you can cover your bills, whatever the case may be. So finances, very, very important. We kind of went over it already, so I don't want to spend so much time because we're running out, but very, very important.
Yeah, that's good stuff.
Cool. And then last but not least, but these are just general conversations. And I wish me and Ben had 5 hours to go over this topic, because I know we could fill it up, but you guys would fall asleep by the end of it. This topic is so important because there's so much to go over. I'm just going over a couple main things, but these are conversations that you're going to have, or people are going to think about, like when you go through the process. And it's very, very important to educate people about certain things. Like you can't stray away from it. You can't stray away from, somebody showing up late or missing days. If you're afraid to have conversations, and everybody at some point, like I know for me, I was afraid to have conversations with people. My mindset was, if I have conversations with somebody, then they might quit. Right. And Ken used to poke fun at me all the time. He said, Rob, you're afraid to ruffle people's feathers. And I was like, what? That's like such a weird way to put it. But he was right. I was afraid to ruffle people's feathers because I was afraid that if I had a tough conversation with somebody, they would quit and fall off. And he said, Rob, don't you think that you're actually doing them more of a disservice, that you're letting them get away with shitty habits or being a poor student, or you're letting them like not be good or hit their goals? Don't you think that's more of a disservice? And I was like, damn, when you put it like that, yeah. So I started to change the way I looked at things. Instead of shying away from the tough conversations, I started to attack them because I knew that the right person would understand where I came from. That's why the relationship is so important. If I don't have a relationship with somebody and I'm like aggressive with the conversation, or I'm talking about some of these things, they're not going to get, like, they're going to think I'm a dick. I don't want that either. But if I have a relationship with them, I care about them, I spend time with them outside the office, I really know them as a person, and then I have a tough conversation with them, they're going to look at me as a mentor. There's been plenty of times in my management training program where Ken called me out for being an idiot or being stupid or lazy or anything along those lines. But I knew that at the end of the day, Ken really cared about me as a person. So I took it with a grain of salt, but I knew he really cared about me. And I said, I know Ken's having this conversation with me because he wants me to get better. So you got to be a good student. You got to take the constructive criticism, and you got to be able to move forward, but you can't be afraid to have these conversations. You can't be afraid to talk about somebody's punctuality or calling out sick, or if somebody has low production for the week, you got to call them out. You got to talk to them about it. You got to, bring back their goals or their whatever it is. If somebody has a poor attitude and the conversation happens the other time, oh, Van, you lost your attitude. I didn't lose my attitude. I'm just being real. Okay, no, you're being negative. Like, that's just what you're doing. So you can't be afraid to talk about these types of things. These are just some of them. But like, even for somebody like in our offices, sometimes we have turnover. We have people that fall off and we have people that quit. And then I'm on a Sunday call, and they're talking about, like, we want people to fall off. We want people to quit because those people aren't the right people for our business. Like, that happens in everything. Right? They're in any business, in any sports team, in any school, whatever, there's people that drop out. There's people that quit. There's people, like, that's normal. That's not an uncommon thing. That's not that happens all the time, every day, all the time. And the way businesses and the way teams and schools look at it is they go next person up. Like, you think, Villanova or like these big time schools like West Virginia care if somebody drops out? They're like, okay, cool. Like, did you pay? Okay, cool. Next, like, who's up? So I don't want to be morbid and think that we don't care about people, because obviously we do, but next person up, who's going to be the next guy or girl that steps up? That's one of the best parts about our business. So these are just some of the other things that I wanted to go over about conversations and stuff like that. But that's pretty much all I got, man.
Well, Rob, you did a really good job of, like, not just talking about the subject, but going over a list of sort of action items that people can do to start developing their people better, and to start having, people approach the business in a better attitude with a better mentality. So anybody that was listening, the good news is, Maddie has created a YouTube channel to where, you can ask your owner for permission. They can give you access. You can go in and watch a lot of these almost called these podcasts, but these webinars that we've done, where you can listen and learn from topics. And I think today was so good. And also, I know there's a Slack channel. If you've never heard of that app, you can download it, Slack, where the slides of all these meetings have been uploaded. So you can actually log in and check them out, because I think there's a lot of really good stuff. I have so many notes, Rob, from this. So I'm going to run this leaders meeting today with my guys. But we have a couple questions that we'll get to it. First of all, can you go back to the finances slide? Somebody's requesting. And then once you get there, there's a good question. It says, how do you manage multiple people, without burning out or exhausting yourself in the process?
Well, everybody is responsible for their team. And a lot of these conversations aren't like these super long types conversations. They're just sitting down with somebody, I mean, one-on-one, and you go over there, finally, like, hey, how many apps did you did? How many were installed? This is going to be your paycheck for the week. How's everything going? Good. What do you have bills coming up? So it's not like these elongated conversations, and make a day of it. Like, it should be either Wednesdays or Thursdays before payroll comes in. So this way people know what they're supposed to, what they're expecting for that week. Right. So it doesn't necessarily have to take a crazy amount of time. I think there's a lot of fluff, and there's a lot of things that people just stay in the office just to stay in the office, but they're not being productive with their time. If we could be productive with that time by having conversations like this, I think you'll be fine. So if you're managing, say I'm close to assistant management, and I mean, I have like maybe 10 people on my crew, but I have 2 top leaders. Shouldn't my top leaders be having these conversations with their mini groups, right? So it's not like I do this with every single office. Like, out of all the 11 offices, a lot of these guys and girls manage their own people. So you can't be afraid to duplicate. I hate delegate, but duplicate, right? Your leaders should be shadowing those conversations to start, and then they feel confident, and then they can do it. That's how you develop people, right?
Yeah.
Show them how to do it.
When I look at sort of the term burnout, I think that happens with people, when they're spending a lot of time with people who are not the right people to spend time with. Just the way we teach you guys how to navigate the field is kind of like, if the customer doesn't have a good attitude, you got to move on. Like, you can't spend time with people and try to turn a no into a yes. That's where you see a lot of reps lose their attitude in the field, because they're really trying to overturn 50 objections. The same thing happens when you're building a team, right? When you have people on your crew that just, they're not doing the right things. They don't have a good attitude. They come in with that look on their face. You're like begging them to send their goals in. You're begging them to show up early. Those people are not your people. So it's kind of like you'll get burnt out by trying to turn people who are not really the right people into the right people. So your job is the same thing. We say quality time, QTQP. You got to do that when you're building your team. And a part of that process, like Rob talked about, is your recruiting funnel. And I've seen it so many times when people aren't taking out day of observations every day, and they're not recruiting at a constant rate. They end up sort of putting so much emphasis on the 1 or 2 people that they have. And then they think that emphasis on those people is a reflection of the whole business. And it's like, no, those are just like 2 people. You need more people in your funnel. This is an LOA game. So it's, imagine if I told someone, hey, go talk to 2 people today and try to sign them up. I mean, Jesus, that's a lot of pressure. And that's not a fair expectation on how we really go out in the field and find success. So when talk about burning out, it's the same concept. Your job is not to turn no's into yeses. Your job is to constantly recruit and have people to work with that excite you, that are coming in with that great attitude. They may not be the highest skill level, but they got the right mentality to work with. And that's where you can turn those people into success stories. So really, really good stuff. Rob, we are at our 1 minute mark for an hour. Any last words of advice for the crew? Because I thought today's topic was really great.
There's a lot of people probably questioning their management training program right now, and all the things that they haven't been doing for the past however long, because they want to be able to grow and build their situations. That's great, guys. You got to realize the time of frame of where we're at right now. September recruiting has been the biggest or second biggest recruiting wave for us for the past 5 years, consistently every single year, year over year. The goal right now is to run calls like this to prep you for that time frame. We're getting ahead of the wave. The recruiting wave is coming. Start swimming. Start working on your leadership. Start getting better as a leader. Start getting better with conversations. Start getting good at this type of stuff. So this way, when the recruiting wave comes, you can hit it and you can ride it to the shore and get promoted. That's the goal. That's what we're trying to do. So if you feel a little overwhelmed or you haven't been doing these things, that's okay. There's time to improve. There's time to get better. I don't care if you've been in the business for 8 months. I don't care if you started yesterday. Like, there's get better. Focus on what you can do to change right now. You got a week or 2 weeks before September recruiting comes in. And this September is going to be extra special because a lot of people that graduated from college didn't want to get jobs because they were cooped up in their dorms. They were going to school from home. So they spent the summer partying and going out and doing all these things. All of those people are going to be applying for positions in the next 2 to 4 weeks. So this September is actually going to be bigger than the other Septembers we had for the past 5-6 years because of the pandemic. So I hope you guys are ready is the biggest thing I would say. And I hope you guys take advantage of it.
And the whole COVID thing, where I know there's been a COVID relief that looks to be ending in September. So anybody that's been kind of sitting on that, waiting for that to run out, that time is coming up. So Rob, really, really good stuff. Thank you so much for taking the time to prepare as much as you did. It means a lot. I know the guys really appreciate it. So Rob, if anybody wants to reach out to you, I know you said you'd be available. Ask your owners for Rob's information. They all have it. It's his email, his contact info, because he's always great about helping out and running extra calls for anybody that needs it. So Rob, thanks again. You kicked ass, and we will see you guys on this call in 2 weeks. Next week will be your specific program leadership call. Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Rob.
Thanks, guys.